half of the problem with comprehensive sexuality education, at least in India, that's a bigger problem, is that nobody talks about it. It's just not in conversations. It's just not in government's conversations, in grassroots conversations. It's just not happening. And I'm not saying that there are not bigger issues that exist. There are not more prominent issues in the country, developmental challenges that we are facing. But this also needs a seat at the table. That's it.
Hi listeners, Melting Pot is privileged to be collaborating with the Zero Period for a series of conversations with their team on awareness about comprehensive sexuality education.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 1 of a very, very special 5-part series on Melting Pot. And this is being done in collaboration with the Zero Period. And I'm so excited today to be talking to this young founder, Barkha Tripathi, who's the founder of Zero Period. And just a little very quick background to the Zero Period. It's a non-profit platform that kind of creates awareness about comprehensive sexuality education. So that's the involvement. And thank you so much for joining me today, Barkha.
Thank you so much for having me, Payal. It's lovely to be here.
Okay, so before we kind of get into the Zero Period and comprehensive sexuality education in more detail, I would like to just get a little background on you. It would be interesting for me as well as the viewers and the listeners.
So I am soon to be 25 right now, 24-year-old social entrepreneur, and have had a professional career of around 4 years now. So I did my graduation in economics. From there, I went into the corporate world, started to explore that side. But I guess personally, I've always had some motivation to work in the social impact space. Of course, it's driven from my own personal journey growing up, versus how I see the world at large. That's my own viewpoint towards the world at large. And I feel we need more people in social impact. It's just, and specifically in a country like India, more and more smart, educated people who have the skills, who have the resources, if they're involved in social impact, I think that can make a world of a difference. So that sort of reckoning happened when I was in my corporate job, trying to understand the nuts and bolts of how the professional world works. Then that ended in a year and a half, because then I really made up my mind that I want to explore social impact. Started working at another startup that works in skill building, and I was involved with them for a year. But again, I think then pandemic came, which was also a little bit of a blow for not only me professionally, because I was working at a startup, but personally as well. A lot of things happened on a personal front, and that just kind of nudged me in the direction to think about, what do I want to do? How do I see my future? And if social impact is it, then how do I want to be involved? Like, what's the cause that speaks to me the most? And I think back in the day when Bhumika and I, so Bhumika is actually my batchmate, who's the co-founder of the Zero.
Okay.
So her and I were actually in a conversation on a call, like it was a random chit chat between two friends. And this cause kind of came up on its own. I never really seeked it, is what I think about it now. We both were just, chatting and just recalling our school lives, how it was growing up, and the kind of issues we both faced when it came to body shaming, bullying, peer pressure, harassment, and, stuff like that. And yeah, I guess just the next day we woke up thinking, might as well do something about it. Might as well start rolling some balls in this direction now that we have the time, we have the will. So that's where actually Zero Period began, and the rest has been history.
So what is the significance of the Zero Period? Why did you choose a name like the Zero Period?
Yeah, Payal, it'll be a bit comical if I tell you that people often assume that we talk about menstruation because there is a word period in our name.
So that's why I wanted to clarify, because I'm aware, but a lot of the people who are listening into this conversation or will be viewing it will probably have the same question, So Yeah.
So the zero period, the logic behind this word actually comes from our theory of change as it is, what zero period essentially intends to do, right? So when we do imagine, like, say, a utopian world where we are saying that every child in India, every school, public, private, no matter what, has comprehensive sexuality education in their schooling like curriculum. Like it's a part of every child growing up from first standard to 10th standard. They are getting this education, right? So the question then remains, okay, we have the resources, we have the experts who are coming in, we have students who are ready, we have parents who are on board. Where do you fit it in a school's like timetable, right? And that's where the concept of zero period came, right? Because I think most of us growing up, at least in India, that's a concept. I'm not sure that stands true for every country. But in India, many schools actually have like something called the zero period, where like, students come in, it's usually an assembly time or like a free period,
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
the
yeah.
first hour of school where children are just getting into the headspace of like, yeah, now we need to get down to studying.
Right.
So that 1 hour is something that really like, again, like reflecting back to my own life, my own journey, right? I was just thinking that, that time was often wasted just chitter chatter with friends, catching up on whatever gossip happened the day before, talking to our teachers, catching up on homework, stuff like that. And it is a personal time. So why not just make it educational as well? And that's where the name zero period comes up as. If we were to really envision a world where sexuality education exists, it can very well find its own place in the world that we live in today. And yeah, that's the ethos behind it.
Okay. So, what some of the different ways in which, I mean, you did mention that it's a lot about teachers creating this awareness within, the teaching community. So how exactly do you go about it? That's one. And two, what kind of challenges have, because you're young, your team is young, and most of the teachers are obviously older. They've had this thinking for years, right? So how do you bring about that change? What are some of the factors that you have introduced within the community to bring about this change, or not change but awareness?
So let me answer the first question first. So the intervention strategy, right? And actually that ties me to your, where you talked about like it's such a psychological thing, how we perceive sexuality education, right? So with teacher training, like the model that we essentially have is very unique. It's actually not been tried in India, before by any other non-profit that works in this space or similar to this. But the government has tried and failed at doing this. I mean, there's still attempts going on, so hopefully something similar pans out. But essentially, look at it this way. If we were to scale any sort of education, like I want to make sure that this subject reaches masses, how will I do that? I have to involve people who are interested, who are motivated to become a part of the mission, right? To become integrated into this system so that they also don't feel like they have to go over and above to accommodate it. It just seamlessly incorporates, right? That's where the uniqueness of our model comes in, because we want to make sure that the schools that we are touching, where we are taking our curriculum, is not just the zero period, the youth driven young folk team going in and talking to children and maybe telling them like XYZ things and the intervention just ending. So information is a one big chunk of sexuality education, but what is also equally important to support. What is also equally important is community acceptance, right? With this subject, because it is, as much as it is an education and a healthcare concern, it's also a social and behavioral concern in society. So we need people to be on the same team, everybody to be on the same team for the child to truly reap the benefits of having this information at hand. Otherwise, it doesn't really make any sense. The child knows, like they can make some personal choices in a private capacity, but the acceptance, the need for others to also understand them, that just goes unmet. And that is just us achieving half the mission, right? So that's where the idea of teacher training comes in, because if we want this model to be scaled in India, we need to make sure more and more people who are already in the education ecosystem get involved. So that really brings us as the more core beneficiaries being teachers, who then come on board with us and only teachers who have a degree of self-motivation, who have a degree of inclination towards this from a set school, take up this curriculum, take our training, and go and talk to pre-adolescent children about this, right? So both things, right? At the same time, we also want the teacher to have like a certain degree of inclination or a certain degree of, yes, I don't want my students to like, think about these things. I want to support them through this time. And because teachers are in this profession day in and day out, they know the need. They know it very well. They may not be comfortable, but they know that this is required. So we are just looking for that one courageous change maker in that system who would just say, yeah, I mean, I want to see a better world and I want to be involved. And then that's the person, that's our target audience. This person we train, this person we upskill and who already exists in a school. So it's not like we're doing anything additional, right?
Additional,
and remains in the system. So the sustainability aspect also gets covered, right? They consistently are present for the child to reach out, to support. Like the child is always aware that I have a safe space to go to. If I have a question, I have an adult who can answer it. And as much as like I personally also do believe in peer-led model, like where people like us, like young adults, basically going and talking to younger kids. Of course, like that also has many benefits, but an adult just showing support, that there's nothing like it. And I think the entire team really feels the same way, like is on the same page, that as much as peer-led models have worked in the past, it's time where we also ask adults to be courageous and just ask them to be supportive, and whether they would like to be a part of this change or not.
So what kind of a reaction do parents have?
All right. So actually, interestingly, one big angle that's involved here is also the government collaboration, right? Say, if my community leader or somebody in my district agrees that this is important, then the parent also, until unless they don't have a very stringent disagreement, they're also usually on board. So like this was a very initial innovation that we also as a team had, that we'll have to have like thorough parent orientations, and we have to make sure that they are also on board this, that. But now we're realizing that because our model is entirely B2B, so it's business to business, right? So the cultural shift that's happening in Karnal, say for example, within Karnal, what they are seeing this as is a government initiative. They are seeing this as a school initiative. So the school, the government is agreeing that they want to do this, and that is why. Yes, I'm not going to say that we have not faced opposition. There have been questions, there have been concerns, they've been raised to the other party that we are involved with. But usually those are very minimal, and those are just questions that about age appropriateness, or about just knowing what all we will talk about in the curriculum and stuff like that. If there is a very strong response of I'm not okay with my child going through this, sitting through this, then again I think we have to go abide by parental consent as per even the legal requirements of the country. So if there is a hard opposition, then we don't we kind of let go of the child from the classroom, and that's all right. But yeah, from our end, at least from my organization's end, our intent is always to clarify as many questions as we can. And to have a conversation with the parent under concern, and usually that has worked in the past. Like I said, it's like two businesses together who are saying this is important. So as a third party, who are also coming up and raising an objection to it, they are also then coming from an approach of I want my questions answered, and not just saying I just want to back off. So,
yeah. The information that is disseminated has to be very, very age appropriate. So that, I guess, when you're involving the teachers at the different schools, that is something that you probably are very, very conscious of, correct?
Correct. Yeah, of course. I think age appropriateness is key to comprehensive sexuality education. Although there are some rooms of thoughts where people feel that, it is okay if the child, and see, every child is unique. They have different learning needs. They have different perspective to life, right? So there are some younger kids who, kind of garner interest in this space earlier than, an average child will, and they will ask questions. So there is a school of thought in this entire space which says that, if the child is asking, you should never not answer. You should always answer, right? It becomes a demon, it becomes an embarrassment, it becomes a shameful thing only when you say, this is not right for you. This is not right for you to ask. That is you putting shame in the child, right? So if they're not showing interest, then there is an age appropriate way of exposure, which can always happen. Like a pre-adolescent kid would know about like their bodies, what puberty will mean for them, what all feelings they're going to feel when they enter this. So a readiness just before teenage years kind of arrive. Same way, like this is the group that we deal with, but like say for later adolescents, like 18, 19, 17, that age group, they would want like, more knowledge on safe sex practices, more knowledge on consent, more knowledge on like various other areas, right?
Yeah.
But yes, I think I also personally do believe that if the child has asked, the answer should never be, you should not ask. You should always answer it like it's a science. Like, they've asked, how does sex work? Bachche kaise hote, how are kids born? They ask these questions, you tell them, and you tell them as if like it's the most normal thing in the world. And if they get grossed out, if they have an icky feeling about it, you can also tell them you will feel it when the time comes. And even if you don't, that's okay too. So like that normalization needs to happen whenever that question is posed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. And so you do, you also engage the community in wherever you are outside of schools. Do you also have like workshops and things like that where, the parents and the children kind of come together and attend these workshops? Is that also something that you do?
So not parents and children together, but the schools that we usually partner with, like I said, I mean, our model is very B2B. So the schools that we partner with, we ensure that the teachers, of course, the training that they're getting, that's met. Then at the same time, we also have parent orientations, which are separate, not with children. So where we are orienting parents with like why this is required, what your child will go through, why this intervention is needed, etc. And then the children are also there. So all stakeholders are involved. But again, like I think our own vision alignment is such that we don't want to put them in the same room together, because that can, for some parents, specifically in an Indian cultural context, like it could be a concern. There could be some shame, and children really latch on to their parents feeling shame. So we don't want to invite that either. If the parent is not comfortable, the school, the education body should take care of this educational need nonetheless. And we will make sure that, the child doesn't feel like there's any sense of embarrassment, at least where the question is asked, where this topic is being discussed. So, yeah.
Okay. So before we sign off, is there anything that you would, I mean, outside of all that you've already shared, anything that, any message that you would like for the listeners and viewers to have or get?
One thing that I do want to say is, even when I started working in this space, first started to find out about it, one thing that really made a difference in my personal life, not my professional life, is how me being involved in this space actually made people around me comfortable to ask me questions, to even like not just ask me questions, but like just curious about what is it? Like I want to know more about it, and why is Barkha out there saying that it's okay, it's normal, like I want to know more. So what I really understood by that was that advocacy, or you propagating the subject matter as normal, as something that I support, or you support, or anybody who's listening supports, right? It's just so crucial to the work in and of itself. Like if somebody out there really goes and says, I believe in this and I feel like this should be taught in schools, there will be 2 people opposing, but there will be 20 people whose curiosities will rile up. They will suddenly start to think in that direction that, I mean, what is the problem? What's the concern? Why is it a taboo? Let me think about it. Half of the problem with comprehensive sexuality education, at least in India, that's a bigger problem, is that nobody talks about it. It's just not in conversations. It's just not in government's conversations, in like, grassroots conversations. It's just not happening. And I'm not saying that there are not bigger issues that exist. There are not more prominent issues in the country, developmental challenges that we're facing. But this also needs a seat at the table. That's it. That's what we ask for. So what I would like to say to people is, of course, like, wherever you get that forum, wherever you get that chance, wherever somebody asks you about it, be informed, be aware, and advocate for it. Say that you support it, say that you want to do your part in making sure that the child receives right information, not via internet, not via unregulated resources, but via schooling. Like wherever they're going, they should get this as normal and as naturally as they get any other form of education.
Yeah.
it is about their life ultimately. Like, we may not use other subjects in our day-to-day life, but like the skills that we learn in a sexuality education classroom, we will use that on a daily basis in our adult lives, right? So that is like, your people support, and not just support, like vocal prominent support is what's really required in this space now more than ever. And I want people who are in like privileged positions, people who like, are upper class, specifically men, specifically like, people who can really move the needle in that direction and amplify. They definitely should do that. So yeah, that's, I guess, advocacy is something that really stuck with me when I also started this work, that, just how comfortable people suddenly got about the subject around me, just by me being here. So that's just a message I also want to send out to anybody who's listening. Be active, be vocal. The space needs it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Barkha. I mean, I think the work that you're doing is just so, it's important. It needs to reach out to as many people as possible, and that change is so important, and you're going to be a part of the change. Really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so very much.
Working in the treacherous and very niche space that is comprehensive sexuality education in India, the Zero Period depends upon donations and external funds by community members who believe in the mission and the vision of the organization. If you are willing and you're able to, please do donate to the crowdfunding campaign of the Zero Period by clicking on the link in the description. Thank you. For more weekly conversations, do listen to Melting Pot on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts. Follow us on YouTube and on Instagram at Podcast Melting Pot. So until the next episode, this is Payal signing off.